Well, hello there, motherfucker. So I wanted to do a little video here. I made a post on Facebook that got a couple of people stirring, and I knew that was going to happen. And I do what I do best. I spark controversy here in the YWC. Um, the only other person that could probably do it better than me is probably Cameron Morales, but I wanted to talk about Rick and Morty, this cartoon that's like sweeping the nation. And I think that it's pretty freaking overrated, is all I'm saying. So, about a year ago, I don't hang out with this guy anymore. One of my former friends told me I should watch the show Rick and Morty that's on Adult Swim. And so I watched a couple of episodes with him, and he's sitting there next to me laughing his fucking ass off. We watched a couple of episodes. The one that I'm thinking about right now that I clearly remembered out of that handful of episodes we watched was the one where his dad wants Pluto to be a planet, but the you know um, and there's a movement of aliens who want Pluto. Like I said, okay, the writing that was okay. The aliens want to make Pluto a planet. They're kind of taking advantage of the guy's stupidity. And there's a lot of things about it. So Rick and Morty. It's a scientist. He's a drunk. He lives with them, and the other, and there's a kid, and it's like inspired by Back to the Future. I've heard that's how my friend described it to me. Oh, because he knows that I'm a massive fan of Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm not really getting that vibe. I get it that he's like a scientist, and then you've got a teenage kid, and that but this is not like Back to the Future at all. Rick and Morty is not like Back to the Future. Stop comparing it to Back to the Future. Back to the Future was brilliant. It's a classic. This is not a classic, really. You know, they, they've been doing this type of humor, with the drunk character for a long time on Adult Swim, and they've been doing it better, trying to make things raunchier with cartoons. And Adult Swim has kind of really gone off the deep end. They've had a lot of good shows in the past, but I've said like some of the most brilliant shows that have been on Adult Swim. Well, this was way before Adult Swim even came, but became a part of Adult Swim. Space Ghost Coast to Coast is probably the best adult themed cartoon they ever had on Cartoon Network, and that started back in the early '90s. I'll never forget when I first watched that show. I thought that was hilarious and that was brilliant and that was smart comedy. Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, is underrated. It's a forgotten show. That was brilliant. How they took a past character, just like Space Ghost, and they just morphed it into something hilarious and unique. Rick and Morty is just like it's feeding off of a lot of the same ideas that have been introduced in different Adult Swim cartoons. Like, what if we made a character into a drunk? What if we had some raunchier adult themed material? And I get it, each character is like, kind of has their own little personality. Um, and there's always like a conflict introduced, like in any show. And like I said, like the episode, like with Pluto, it was, but it's not. It's well written, but it's not blowing my mind. I'm not laughing my ass off at it. I don't think that it's that hilariously done. Most of the things that Rick says, that comes out of his mouth, it's humorous, but it's not hilarious. He's a drunk. He's belligerent. I get it, but it's the same one note idea played over and over again. And Morty is like the wide eyed kid that he kind of just he knows that he's just like a drunk and everything, and he kind of just goes along with it, and they wind up on zany adventures, and that's kind of where they kind of got the idea to compare this to Back to the Future, but it's not as good as that. So that's probably one of the first things I have a problem with this show is the comparisons to such a great, monumental, and legendary film series like Back to the Future, when it is not even close to being as good as that. This is a show that just gets overrated by the fans, but it's like not just like the show is like popular with the fans; they obsess over it. Like Rick and Morty fans are just obsessive. They're making like, oh my god, this is one of the greatest cartoons of all time. And listen, like there's people that are older than me even who have grown up with making it like this is one of the best cartoons they've seen in years. When you have not been watching Adult Swim, because there's been many other great shows. You've had the Brak Show. You've even had Home Movies, which wasn't great, but I think was, even a bit of a smarter show in a lot of ways. You had the early seasons of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Metalocalypse. There's going to be other shows that people are going to pelt me with. I was never really that big of a fan of Robot Chicken. Once again, it was, they went on too long with it. It's just, I've kind of had enough with a lot of like these raunchy style cartoons and everything, because they're not doing them as good as they used to. And it doesn't really matter, how hard they try. They're never going to be able to surpass the early days of Adult Swim, because everybody was talking about back then. So you got the younger crowd that's going to think this is really the most amazing thing of all time, the most amazing show they've ever put together. And then you have, like I said, the crowd that's like around my age. And I'm like saying, like, bro, you've seen all the great cartoons all of these years across the decades, and you're still saying this is the best cartoon you've ever seen? Like, this is the best, this is the be-all, end-all of animated comedy? Like, we didn't sit there and watch the early years of Family Guy when it was introduced in 99. Like, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. We're going to pretend that there wasn't a Space Ghost Coast to Coast. We're going to pretend that, like, that Futurama wasn't on, the early years, and we were laughing our asses off at that. We're going to pretend that all these other shows didn't happen, that Rick and Morty is like one of the most exciting creative shows of all time. It's just a show that takes ideas from various other shows, Futurama, small little concept of Back to the Future with the teenager and the scientist, and coming up with little ideas that have been used on previous Adult Swim shows. That's all it is. And I've noticed that with a lot of the more unsuccessful shows, like you've had Super Jail, which is a direct copy of Metalocalypse, just a different setting and just a few more gross out moments. That's all it fucking is. They've had a lot of these shows that they're basically just trying to introduce new shows without really trying to be too creative behind it. And that's why it's disappointing. I understand the younger crowd because, the younger millennials don't really get it. They have no taste. That, of course, many people have said it before me. But for fuck's sake, I mean, really, like the older crowd, like, where are your childhood memories at? Obviously, you're a big kid inside because you love animation. And, that's the reason what drew you to Rick and Morty. But this is kind of like something where your friends are talking about it. It's being talked about online. You see all the merchandise pouring out, and you just want to jump on the bandwagon. But it's a bandwagon that's not even worth getting onto. It's like I said, it's not that great. It's a show that just really borrows from a lot of other shows, and it's being overrated to fuck, basically. Because it really isn't that great, guys. This is not the most amazing show. When you really step back and you analyze it, you'll notice, think about other past Adult Swim shows. And I know you're not going to care. You're being a hater. No, this is just making some accurate criticism. I'm not saying it's the worst show ever. I'm not saying it's a bad show. But I'm saying it's a very overrated show. And people are making it out to be more than what it is. That's all I'm trying to say. Go ahead and hate on me. because I know you will. Because I'm talking against something that's Oh, you hate on everything that's popular. Yeah, I do hate on a lot of stuff that's popular because a lot of stuff that's popular is overrated, and a lot of people, just don't have any taste nowadays, and more people just fit into that group mentality. When they hear people saying something is great, everybody else has to say that it's great, or else they'll be considered the outsider, and they don't want to be the outsider because they want to be a part of the in crowd. Well, there you go, guys. Sit back and complain. Type out the hate comments. Do whatever you gotta do. Until next time, motherfuckers.